There are no accidents. You didn't stumble on this video by chance. Of all the things you could be doing right now, you are here. That's not randomness. That's a quiet invitation. Call it intuition, call it the universe, call it synchronicity. Whatever name you choose, the truth is simple. These words arrived when you needed them. Maybe you're standing at a crossroads. Maybe you've lost something that once defined you. Maybe you're carrying a dream you're too afraid to touch. Or perhaps you've simply forgotten who you were before the world told you who to be. Whatever brought you here, welcome. This isn't just a video, it's a mirror, a conversation between your soul and a truth you've tried to avoid. Let me tell you about a man I once knew. His story might sound familiar. It might even sound like your own. There was a merchant who sold fine carpets in a busy marketplace. Every morning he would arrive before sunrise, unlock the heavy wooden door of his shop, arrange his wares with practiced precision, and wait for customers. He knew every thread, every pattern, every story behind each piece he sold. He was good at his trade, successful even. His shop was well known, his reputation was solid, his income was steady. By all external measures, he had won at life. But every night, as he locked that same heavy door and walked home through empty streets, he felt a hollow ache in his chest, a void that no amount of success could fill, a silence that screamed louder than any noise. He had everything he thought he wanted: security, reputation, respect, comfort. But he had abandoned something precious along the way, something irreplaceable. When he was young, maybe 18 or 19, he dreamed of being a musician, not for fame or fortune, but because music was the language his soul spoke. He would sit by the river with a borrowed guitar, playing melodies that seemed to come from somewhere beyond him, from a place deeper than thought. The music made him feel alive, connected, whole. When he played, he wasn't thinking about bills or responsibilities or what others thought of him. He was simply present, fully himself, the truest version of who he was meant to be. Old women walking by would stop and smile, children would dance, lovers would hold each other a little tighter, and the young man with the guitar would feel like he was doing exactly what he was born to do. But then reality intervened, as it always does. His father, a practical man who had worked his entire life in manual labour, said, "Music doesn't put food on the table. Music doesn't build a future. Music is for dreamers, and dreamers die hungry." His friend said, "Be realistic. You're talented, sure, but so are thousands of others. What makes you special?" His teacher said, "You need to think about your career. You need to think about your career, about stability, about real life." Society said, "Grow up," so he did. He put away the guitar carefully, almost ceremonially, wrapping it in cloth and storing it in a corner. He told himself it was temporary, that he'd come back to it later, when he had more time, more money, more security. He learned the carpet trade from his uncle. He became responsible, practical, safe. He did what everyone expected of him. And every single day, a part of him died a little more. Here's what nobody tells you about abandoning your dreams. The world won't punish you for it. There won't be any cosmic consequences. Lightning won't strike. The ground won't open up and swallow you whole. You'll still pay your bills. You'll still have relationships. You'll still get up each morning and go through the motions. You'll still function, survive, exist. But you'll become a ghost in your own life. Walking, breathing, speaking, but not really living. Going through the elaborate performance of being alive without ever actually feeling it. The merchant had become so good at ignoring his heart that he forgot it was even speaking. The whispers became background noise. The ache became normal. He convinced himself that this hollowness was just life, that everyone felt this way, that the heaviness in his chest was what it meant to be an adult, that trading passion for security was what responsible people did. He built elaborate justifications. At least I'm stable. At least I can support myself. At least I'm not chasing some impossible dream like a fool. He looked at other people who had given up their dreams and felt solidarity, not sadness. It comforted him to see other people abandoning themselves too. When many are lost in the same way, it almost looks like a normal path. Years passed, then decades. The guitar gathered dust. The music faded to silence. The young man with the river and the borrowed guitar became a distant memory. Someone he used to know, someone who felt almost like a stranger. Until one day, everything changed. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The marketplace was moderately busy, nothing special. The merchant was arranging a new shipment of carpets when a traveller entered his shop. The stranger didn't look like a customer. He carried only a small backpack and wore clothes that suggested long journeys and little attachment to material things. His eyes held something the merchant had rarely seen, a deep, settled peace. "Excuse me," the stranger said. "I'm looking for the old temple on the eastern hill. Could you point me in the right direction?" The merchant gave him detailed directions. The stranger thanked him and turned to leave. But then he stopped. He turned back slowly, his gaze fixed on something in the corner of the shop. His expression changed. Surprise, recognition, something tender. "Is that a guitar?" the stranger asked quietly. The merchant looked where the stranger was pointing. Covered in dust, almost hidden behind boxes of inventory and forgotten stock, was his old guitar. He hadn't touched it in 20 years, hadn't even really looked at it. It had become invisible, like so many things we choose not to see. "It was," the merchant said quietly, his voice catching slightly. "Once." The stranger's eyes met his. "May I?" Before the merchant could answer, before he could think of all the reasons why this was odd or inappropriate or uncomfortable, the stranger had already moved toward the guitar. He picked it up gently, reverently, as if it were a sacred object. He dusted it off with his sleeve, tested the strings. "Badly out of tune," the stranger said with a slight smile, "but still alive." He spent a few moments adjusting the tuning pegs, his ear close to the strings, listening with complete attention. And then, without warning or preamble, he began to play. The music that filled the shop was unlike anything the merchant had heard in years. Not because it was technically complex or virtuosic, but because it was real, honest, alive. Every note carried weight. Every chord progression told a story. Something happened at that moment that the merchant couldn't explain. Customers who had been browsing stopped moving. Passers-by paused in the doorway. The usual noise of the marketplace seemed to fade away. And the merchant felt his carefully constructed walls begin to crack. His throat tightened, his eyes burned. And then, to his complete shock and embarrassment, tears began streaming down his face. He tried to stop them, tried to maintain composure, but it was impossible. Because the music was awakening something in him that he'd buried so deep he thought it was dead. Some essential part of his soul that he'd locked away and tried to forget. When the stranger finished playing, the shop was silent. Several people had gathered at the entrance, drawn by the music. They applauded softly, then dispersed, as if they'd witnessed something sacred. The stranger carefully placed the guitar back in its corner. He looked at the merchant, who was still trying to compose himself, wiping his face with the back of his hand. "I'm sorry," the merchant mumbled. "I don't know what came over me." "Don't apologize," the stranger said gently. "Those aren't tears of sadness. They're tears of recognition. Your soul remembering who you are." The merchant didn't know what to say. The stranger continued, his voice soft but penetrating. "Every person is born with a song inside them, a unique melody that only they can play. Most people spend their entire lives making sure no one ever hears it. They silence it with responsibilities, with fear, with other people's expectations. They call this wisdom. They call this maturity. They call this growing up," he paused, letting the words settle. "I call it tragedy." The stranger moved toward the door, then turned back one final time. "That guitar has been waiting for you. For 20 years it's been patient. It hasn't given up on you, even though you gave up on it. The question is, how much longer will you keep it waiting?" And then he was gone. The merchant stood alone in his shop, surrounded by carpets and customers and the life he'd built. But all he could hear was the echo of music. All he could feel was the unbearable weight of those words. Every person is born with a song inside them. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the encounter over and over in his mind. He kept thinking about the guitar, about the music, about the version of himself he had buried alive 20 years ago. And he realized something terrifying. He had been living someone else's life, not intentionally, not maliciously. But slowly, decision by decision, compromise by compromise, he had traded his truth for approval, his passion for security, his soul for comfort. He had spent 20 years building a life he didn't even want, playing a role he never auditioned for, wearing a mask that had fused to his face. The next morning, the merchant did something he hadn't done in 2 decades. He woke up before dawn, not to open his shop, not to get ahead on work, but to sit by the river where he used to play as a young man, the same river, the same spot. He brought the guitar. The walk there felt surreal, like stepping back in time. The river hadn't changed, the trees were older but still standing. The rocks where he used to sit were still there, worn smooth by water and time. He sat down, opened the case and looked at the guitar. His hands were shaking. 20 years. 20 years since he'd held this instrument. 20 years since he'd allowed himself to even think about this part of his life. He placed his fingers on the strings. They felt foreign, awkward. His calluses had long since faded. The muscle memory was buried under decades of neglect. He tried to play a simple chord. It sounded terrible, out of tune, clumsy. He tried another, slightly better but still rough. He sat there for an hour playing badly, remembering slowly, making mistakes, frustrated by how much he'd forgotten. And something extraordinary happened. Nothing. No divine revelation, no cosmic sign, no angels singing or heavens opening, no sudden transformation into the musician he once dreamed of being. Just a middle-aged man, a guitar, and the sunrise. But it was enough, because for the first time in 20 years, he felt like himself. Here's what the world doesn't want you to know. Following your heart isn't a one-time decision. It's not some dramatic moment where you quit your job, sell everything, and chase your dream into the sunset. It's a daily practice, a moment-by-moment choice to honour the truth inside you, even when it's terrifying, even when it's impractical, even when everyone around you thinks you're insane. It's showing up, again and again, even when you're bad at it, even when you've forgotten how, even when it would be easier to go back to sleep. The merchant didn't quit his job that day. He didn't become a famous musician. He didn't have some fairy tale transformation where everything suddenly became perfect. But he started playing again, every morning, just for himself. No audience, no expectations, no goal beyond reconnecting with the part of himself he'd abandoned. And slowly, imperceptibly, his life began to change. Not externally at first. The shop looked the same. His routine remained similar. To outside observers, nothing had changed. But internally, everything had shifted. He smiled more, laughed more, and felt more. The hollow ache in his chest began to fill with something he'd almost forgotten. Joy. Customers noticed something different about him, though they couldn't quite name it. He seemed more present, more alive, more genuine. Some customers began arriving early, drawn by the sound of music drifting from his shop before it opened. They would stand outside listening, not wanting to interrupt. The merchant began to play for them, informally at first, then more regularly. His morning practice became a small ritual that others looked forward to. Word spread. People started bringing their children to hear the carpet merchant play guitar by the river at dawn. He began teaching. Free lessons for anyone who wants to learn. He rediscovered not just his own music, but the joy of helping others find theirs. His carpet business? It's still there. He still pays his bills, he's still responsible. He didn't abandon his practical life. But now, he's alive. Because he learned a secret that most people never discover. You don't have to choose between your soul and your survival. Between your dreams and your responsibilities. Between who you are and what the world needs you to be. You just have to have the courage to honour both. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. Not with your logical mind, but with that deeper knowing inside you. What's your guitar? What dream did you bury? What passion did you trade for safety? What version of yourself did you abandon because someone told you it wasn't practical, wasn't realistic, wasn't worth pursuing? Maybe it's art. Maybe it's writing. Maybe it's travel. Maybe it's starting that business you've been thinking about for years. Maybe it's learning a new language, or dancing, or teaching, or healing. Maybe it's love. Real, vulnerable, terrifying love that you've been too afraid to risk. Maybe it's simply learning to say no to the life others expect you to live and yes to the life your soul is calling you toward. Whatever it is, I promise you this, it's still there. That dream, that calling, that whisper in your heart that says, there's more. You're capable of more. You're meant for more. It never left. You just learned to ignore it. You turned down the volume. You built walls around it. You convinced yourself it was childish, impractical, impossible, but it's still there, waiting, patient, like that guitar covered in dust. And here's the truth nobody wants to hear. The world will give you 1,000 reasons to keep ignoring it. Fear will say, it's too late, you're too old, you've missed your chance. Logic will say, be realistic, you have responsibilities, bills to pay, people depending on you. Others will say, who do you think you are? What makes you special? Stay where you are. Don't disturb the order of things. Don't ask for more than what life has already given you. And the cruelest voice of all, your own, will whisper in the dark hours, you're not talented enough, not brave enough, not special enough. You'll fail. You'll embarrass yourself. It's safer to keep dreaming small. But those voices, they're not true. They're just afraid of wearing different masks. They're the same voices that convinced the merchant to put away his guitar 20 years ago. The same voices that keep millions of people locked in lives they don't really want, playing roles they never chose. The real tragedy isn't failure. It's never trying. It's reaching the end of your life, which comes faster than any of us expect, and realizing you spent it living someone else's dream. Playing it safe, being reasonable, making everyone comfortable except yourself. It's dying with your music still inside you. There's a reason this video found you today, right now, in this exact moment of your life. Your soul is calling. It's been calling for a while now, maybe years, maybe decades. Maybe you've been ignoring it. Maybe you've been too busy, too scared, too practical to listen. But today, right now, at this moment, you're listening. And that changes everything, because awareness is the first step. Recognition is the beginning of transformation. The moment you acknowledge that whisper, you can no longer pretend it doesn't exist. I'm not going to tell you to quit your job tomorrow. I'm not going to promise you that following your heart will be easy, or that everything will work out perfectly, or that you'll become rich and famous. Life doesn't work that way. The path of truth is rarely the path of ease. But I will tell you this, the universe rewards courage, not with money or fame or external validation, but with something far more valuable, peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you honored your truth, from knowing you listened to your soul, from knowing that when your time comes, you won't die with your music still inside you. So here's what I want you to do. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when you feel ready, because you'll never feel ready. Today, take one small step toward the dream you've been avoiding. Just one. If you've always wanted to write, write one paragraph. If you've dreamed of traveling, research one destination. If you've longed to paint, buy one canvas. If you've imagined teaching, reach out to one person who might need what you know. One step, that's all. Because here's the secret the merchant discovered. The universe doesn't respond to your plans. It doesn't care about your 5-year strategy or your perfect conditions. It responds to your actions. The moment you take that first step, however small, however imperfect, doors begin to open. Signs begin to appear. Help arrives from unexpected places. Opportunities emerge that weren't there before. Not because it's magic, but because you finally aligned yourself with your truth. And when you do that, everything shifts. The merchant still sells carpets. But now, when people enter his shop, they hear music. They see a man who's alive, present, authentic, who chose himself. Some call him foolish for starting so late. Others admire his courage. But he doesn't care about either opinion anymore, because he learned what every awakened soul eventually discovers. It's never too late to become who you were meant to be. This video found you when you needed it most, because somewhere inside you, you're ready. Ready to stop running. Ready to stop hiding. Ready to honor the truth you've been avoiding. Your dream is waiting, not in some distant future, not when you're more prepared, or more qualified, or more brave, right now. So the only question left is, will you answer? The universe is watching. Your soul is listening. One day, in the future, you may look back at this ordinary moment, this random click, this unknown video, and realize it was not random at all. It was the day you stopped walking away from yourself. What will you do?